Hello and welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Traver. It's great to be back with you, and throughout this series I will be speaking with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, today in the studio, I'm joined by Andrew Kelly, owner of 8590. Andrew, you're very welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Very well, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
8590. I'm intrigued. I'll ask you about that in a minute. But before we begin our conversation, a little bit of background on Andrew and his business. So following a decade in the world of PR and comms, Andrew set up his own digital content production company at the start of 2020. He's a completely self-taught cameraman and editor. Working as a client manager and in-house videographer, he's been fortunate enough to work with some of the world's leading brands, such as Miss Universe, Lego, Levi's, ITV, Danske Bank, Kurt Geiger, and many, many more. Andrew, it sounds like you have a fantastic life.
I'm glad it sounds that way, Sarah.
The intros are always brilliant, aren't they? People sit across from me and go, is that me? So fabulous customers and clients right there. But I suppose we'll go back a little further and tell us how it began, because you were in PR and comms for a long time. So you know what makes a good ad and what connects with audiences.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that experience has really served me well in this current role in this business. Like you say, that sector in particular changes quite a lot, and it's very fast paced. So it's important about keeping up with trends and what's changing, how consumers are being targeted, and how that digital marketing sphere is changing. So yeah, it's served me well, and certainly 10 years of experience. When you read back that list of some of the clients working with, like you say, it's very hard to believe that that's actually happened. There's certainly some pinch me moments some days.
And I suppose pinch me moments as well, when you know that you've been working in one area, but you want to jump and you want to go out on your own and you want to set up a business. And there'll be many people tuning into this podcast today, perhaps feeling, I want to do that, but I don't know whether I should jump. So, we do ask that big question at the end of the podcast, but I suppose tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, okay. So I've just recently turned 33. I grew up in Ballyclare with mum, dad, older brother. Now I live in Mollusk with my wife and my two dogs. And so it seems like a fairly normal lifestyle, but sort of to get to this point, it's sort of been a bit of a windy road. So I graduated from Ulster University in public relations, and like most graduates still today, I found that challenge of actually getting a job very tough, because if I was looking for 3, 4, 5 years experience and coming straight out of uni, that's very, very hard to come by. So the pathway I sort of took was slightly winding, in that I did a lot of volunteer work, worked with a lot of charities, and done a number of roles in terms of marketing and comms. So I wouldn't have said it was the most enjoyable years. It was a bit of a grind, to be honest, but I knew that's what I had to do in order to get that experience, to get that foot in the door with an agency.
And at that time, I suppose, the competition for those jobs, because it was a really popular course to do, and a lot of people were going into that comms world.
Yes, no, absolutely. And at that time, it was very much a female-dominated industry, and I suppose to this day, it still is very female-focused. So it is. So just to get that foot in the door and get that opportunity was very tough. It was just constant rejection, which you can understand. You're trying to apply for jobs that are asking for a lot of experience, and you're not really getting anywhere. It'd be very easy just to give up or completely change paths.
Why do you think it was female dominated? Or is that still the case?
I think to some degree, yes, it is. It's very much, I think it's portrayed the PR industry as very sort of female dominated and glitzy and glamorous. And I guess I find that to be sort of almost a bit of a front. So it was, because that's how it's pictured. Everyone's at glamorous parties and opening of new bars and restaurants. And while that's true to some degree, I think it's very misleading. And certainly there's a lot of hard work involved in it. Those occasions maybe are once in a blue moon.
And also the glitz and glam, actually, there's loads of hard work that goes on behind those too, to make everybody have a fabulous time. Takes a lot of hard work.
Absolutely.
So how did you break through?
Yeah, so I think luckily my break sort of came. I'd seen an agency advertising for a junior role, and I thought, this is my chance, I'm going to go for this. And again, I didn't really have high hopes because there had been so much rejection for pretty much 18 months straight in terms of trying to break into this sector. I was with a Belfast agency, it was very well known. I had my interview, and the manager at the time said to me afterwards, he says, listen, I think you're a really good candidate for this job. I would really like to have you in my team. I want to get you back, second interview, and meet the MD. So that all went and happened very fast. I was made a job offer the very next day for it. And sort of my surprise was that I was offered the job. It wasn't that I doubted my abilities, but I guess after 18 months of being rejected, it was sort of a bit of a shock. So the manager said to me, listen, what set you apart from everyone else in this interview was all that grinding you had done, all the volunteer work, because people were coming in, they had 2-3 years, their CV blank. And when they were asked what they had been doing, they hadn't been doing anything was the thing. But the fact I had went out and volunteered so much of my time to build that skill set that is needed for that industry, that certainly was the difference maker.
So when somebody actually told you that's one thing, but was that a bit of a light bulb for you? Had you reached that point perhaps where you were thinking, gosh, maybe I should pick something else? Or talk us through that journey of resilience.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that journey of resilience even to this day has been a continued theme in my life as well as personal and business, but certainly it would be very easy to give up that pursuit to get into that industry, and certainly to take a 9-to-5 job in a Tesco's or something like that, would have been very easy. But that was my passion at the time, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't spend 3 years at university and do all this just to give up at the last hurdle, I think. So for me, that probably would have been my last hurrah in terms of trying to break into that industry. I probably would have refocused the next year and perhaps moved into something different, but at least I can say I tried and I failed.
And great for other people listening to this to hear that too, because a lot of people expect instant success or it's just going to happen. And I suppose jobs are quite plentiful at the minute. And I'm thinking of younger people going out now, and there are so many different agencies. But when you were starting out, there weren't. But you did it and you got in. What was it like?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a culture shock because agency life is very fast paced. So it is. So in any one day, you could be juggling maybe 10, 15 clients, doing different projects, different work, lots of very fast-paced deadlines as well. So for me, that was my first big sort of 9-to-5 type job, and going into an agency where I was the second youngest person there also was very daunting. A lot of people in suits, very corporate environment. It was eye-opening. The people I was working with were all sort of late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, and you could tell straight away there was a real hunger and desire from those people to be successful. And at times you did feel the pressure of it being there, just even the atmosphere in the office. But I think, when you see those people, they were inspiring because that was the level you wanted to get to.
And that drive and determination. But I suppose it's a good time to perhaps talk about what is success anyway. What does success look like? Does it look like a power suit and somebody who's just nailing it every day? Or, have you learned as you've gone on and started up your own business, there's no suit in front of me today. Maybe that's not what success looked like for you.
Yeah, I mean, you ask anyone what success looks like to them and you'll get a different answer every single time. And, success can be measured in a lot of different ways, but one quote that's always stuck with me throughout the years, it was actually Paul O'Connell, the ex-Irish rugby captain, said that, success for him was always, having a trophy at the end of the season or having a medal. Anything less was always a failure to him. And it wasn't until he was very much at the end of his career that he sort of realised that success is very much about being the best version of yourself. If you know you're giving 110% in whatever it is you're doing, that's good enough. You don't need a medal or trophy to be successful.
There's a great quote from the poet Maya Angelou as well about success, and she says, success is fundamentally liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. So that kind of resonated with me too. But I think you have to go through lots of things, because when you're younger and you're starting out, you're not really considering that. You're just trying to do a good job, aren't you? And turn up and yeah, you might have your own goals and aspirations, but a lot of people are people pleasing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on then. When did you decide to start up your own business?
I would say the idea sort of first came to my mind around 2018, 2019. I've always liked that idea of being my own boss. It's something that's very appealing to me. So I would say I started to really seriously think about it in the summer of 2019. So it came about really one day I was doing a project for Bob and Bert's, the coffee shop chain, up in Portrush. And I remember it was a 2-day project just out on the road with those guys. And the very first day, it was beautiful sunny August day, sitting on the beach in Portrush, eating my lunch. And I just thought,
perfect.
This is what it should be. It shouldn't be an £8 sandwich sitting in an office in the centre of Belfast, feeling that pressure. So from that moment, I just sort of thought, I like working to my own schedule, my own time, just sort of that stress of agency life. You're on call 24/7. Any agency, if your phone rings Christmas Day, you pick it up and you answer it. There was days where I was in Tesco's with a trolley full of shopping and had to leave behind for some poor person to put back because the agency just sort of demands almost your soul. So it does. So that sort of high pressured life, I done it for the best part of 6 years, and I give a lot of myself to the company in that industry in particular. So yeah, that was sort of the light bulb moment where I thought I could really be out doing this myself. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, by that point I'd sort of lost my passion for PR and the industry itself, because I felt I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve, which is no bad thing. I guess it's a bit like the footballer who's won everything at a football club. Does he or she stay and continue at that club, or do they move on to a new challenge? And I sort of felt that was sort of my time. I'd done everything I wanted to do. There's nothing really more left for me to achieve there. And I guess the second part of that is people in the company had moved on, and I was moving up into that sort of management level, and then there was more junior staff coming in. And again, more junior staff, you could see the passion there. And my thinking is it right for me to stay in a company where I'm not really passionate about, and I'm prohibiting these people from moving up in the company? So I guess there's a bit of that as well. And I guess, when you're getting junior staff in saying that they were born in 2005, that really scares you and thinks I've been here too long. So it is. So yeah, those were all sort of key factors, and that I would say was sort of the first time that the ball really started to move in terms of taking this seriously.
So what did you do next?
I went home and told my wife, and she sort of gave me a look and said, "What do you think you're doing?" Kind of thing. I guess the concern was, we were both in very well-paying jobs, and I'd worked so hard to get to this point, and she was just very scared, I think, of me going out and things not working out for me, which I can completely understand. If the shoe's on the other foot, I would be the same. So we sort of had talks about what I wanted to do and why I wanted to leave, and then I guess it was telling my employer at the time that this was what I was thinking of doing and hoping to do, and hoping to get their support with that.
I can't help but notice the start date of the start of 2020 when you decided to go out on your own. Eek, just before COVID, or had this happened, or was
2 weeks before COVID?
Okay. Right. Talk me through that.
So basically, the wheels were in motion at the end of 2019 for me to leave the company, and the recruitment process had started, and the plan was in place for me to go down to part-time hours to still help them in terms of a handover of the big client accounts, and also to give me time to build up my new business. So in theory, that was all perfect. December 2019, I had a very short conversation at the time with management. I was basically told that we don't think this is the right move for you. We don't think it's going to succeed. And I guess that was really the moment that lit a fire under me, and I was like, I'm going to make this succeed, and I'm going to do this. So I am. So 2020 came around, and that Christmas period was spent working on a website, working on branding, getting business cards made up, making a list of everything I would need to start a business. So January came around, and I approached InvestNI and went to Mollusk Enterprise Agency and joined the Go For It program. So again, I went in, I had a list of all the equipment I'd need, all the costs, and very quickly we put together a business plan, and the wheels were in motion very fast. So definitely.
You'd recommend that as a route?
Absolutely. I mean, that program was free to join, and the amount of advice I got out of it, and there's grants available as well to help with the business. So certainly that was a massive help to get started, because coming out of that corporate world, I didn't have any idea about bookkeeping and invoicing and tax returns and all that fun stuff. So,
and it's so important. I actually did the same course when I set up my business, and they were talking double Dutch to me, but it was something I had to concentrate on to try and make myself understand business.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's fundamentally, people say to me, you're out on your own, and I'm saying, yeah, but I'm not just the owner. I'm the cameraman, I'm the editor, I'm the accountant, I'm the marketeer. I'm juggling 10 different hats here.
That's it.
So I am. So that was January of 2020, and then February came around, and that was when I really started to sort of market the business as this is something new and fresh that's coming out. And very quickly there was work came in. So for March, April, May 2020, I had $7,500 of work lined up and in the diary.
So March, April, May, we're in the midst of a pandemic, but do you think that was actually a good time for you, because video was everywhere? People were stuck at home, they were on their phones, and they were being inundated with all sorts. I mean, was that actually a good thing? Yeah,
so before sort of the pandemic hit, that was a fantastic start. $7,500 of work already confirmed and in the diary. So it was, so that was brilliant. And then I just remember sort of March time, COVID was sort of starting to come around, and I was going to be in Scotland working with a client, and I got a text the day before just saying, do not come, this is kicking off, we think this is really serious, so stay at home. So that was fine, and a few days later, then I just started getting phone calls from people that had booked for the next 3 months, just cancelling everything.
Oh, okay.
So then
that wasn't a good thing.
No, and that day didn't get any better, because then the company I was employed by at the time called me and said, we're putting you on furlough, and that was the last day I ever worked for them. So in the space of a day, I went from working a 60-hour week, being on call 24/7, to literally nothing overnight. So very much.
And that order book then just suddenly disappeared.
Completely disappeared. Everyone cancelled. A lot of it was event-based work, and it was work in Scotland and here as well, and just everything completely shut down. Right. So it did. So I'm sitting scratching my head thinking,
what have I done?
I've left a good job. I've lost all this work. Where do I even go? And certainly, I think for March, April, May time, I struggled a lot with depression, because couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. I was used to being so busy and never being in my house, to being stuck there constantly all the time. And I think that had a big impact on personal relationships, as much as the business side of things. And it's very tough. So it was, just to get through those months, knowing that, there's no sign of this sort of ending anytime soon. I mean, there was days where I would literally count down the hours that I could go to bed, because I knew when I went to sleep, I didn't have to worry about money.
But Andrew, I'm sure you weren't alone in that. It's just the timing of everything. Yeah. And that compounded by, you had a dream, it was all in place, and it just disappeared. Now, you're sitting in front of me today telling me about this great business. So what happened? How did you come back? Yeah, so I think people say I'm mad when I say this, but I think the pandemic was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to my business. Not for the sort of emergence of digital and video, but more it gave me the chance to really take a step back from the business and look at it and say, right, where do I want to take this business? Who do I want to work with? Because when I went out, I was solely focused on corporate video work, and that's all I wanted to do. Right. Obviously, pandemic hit. That work wasn't there. So you had to pivot. You had to think differently.
Absolutely. I was looking into new markets and people and sectors I'd never worked with, and how do I work with these people? So it was sort of looking ahead and sort of following that reopening plan of, what sectors are going to be reopening. Like, I need to approach these people because they're the ones that need to be coming out and saying, our restaurant, our hotel, whatever it may be, is safe. And here's, the videos, the photos of all these measures in place. So there's very much a tactic there of sort of approaching those sectors as they were allowed to reopen. But it became clear very fast to me that there was a real need for more than just video content for people. So people were coming to me asking for photography. People were coming and saying, we don't know how to use Facebook, Twitter, whatever, can you teach us how to use this? So very fast, I developed what I call my product life cycle. So people either come and they know how to use things very well, or they haven't a clue what to do. So there's very much a teaching element to begin with people, and then once they get the content, they know how to use it and how to use it effectively. It's an important thing. So there's very much a hand-holding process there along the way. But I think in terms of the business and the product offering, the pandemic really accelerated the plans for the business, probably 3-4 years of what I had planned.
And the breadth of offering, you know, it's not just putting your eggs all in one basket,
Absolutely.
which I've said before on this podcast, which is a lesson that I learned as well. Okay, I want to talk a bit more about the products in a second, but how did you pick yourself up at that time, get your head so screwed on and market that new business? How did you reach people, or did you suddenly realise, I have all these contacts?
I guess there's a bit of both. 10 years in that sector, you make a lot of contacts and you build a big network of people. You know, there's still people who I maybe haven't worked with in 2-3 years. I'll reach out and still do work because it's off past experience of delivering good work on projects for them, and they know and trust you to do those work for them. So certainly there's a big element of relying on an older network. But in terms of marketing the business, I think it was very much putting it out there that this was sort of a one-stop shop for digital marketing. You know, people could come to me and get all these different things. And yeah, it was tough to begin with because there's a lot of people doing the same thing that I do, and especially over lockdown, a lot of people were picking up cameras and phones and
that's right, doing it themselves.
Yeah, doing it themselves, and I guess that was
until they realised, actually, you know, those ones that weren't very good at it, I need some help here.
Yeah, it looks a lot easier than what it is sometimes, and certainly that's what I found. You know, people were approaching me saying, you know, they had tried it themselves and failed, and were looking a little more help with it.
This podcast is sponsored by Granite Legal Services, a niche business and immigration law practice located in the heart of Newry City. Granite Legal Services provides legal advice to both individuals and companies alike across a wide range of industries, from employment, commercial or corporate law matters to immigration law. Granite Legal Services focuses on providing legally sound, practical advice to its clients. To get in touch, visit www.granitelegalservices.co.uk or contact 028 3026 2200. So can you remember that first kind of sale, if you like, or that first client that sort of got you going again?
Yeah, I think probably the first project we did would have been in July of 2020. I was with a local gym in Mollusk, and you know, they were reopening again, and they had to obviously show how they were bringing sort of these restrictions in to reopen. And certainly there was a lot of work went into them, and they would be still one of my best clients. So they would be. So I think, you know, when you're actually out in the field then and you have all the equipment, sort of like, right, this is it, it's starting, so it is. So I think that was sort of the feel-good moment, and then that sort of went on a bit of a roll then, and certainly word of mouth is particularly good for my business.
Absolutely, and even that gym showcasing all the people that were coming back in, see the videos, they look at the Facebook page, they look at the Instagram, you know, it's all there.
Absolutely.
And it looks beautiful, so you're actually, it's what you do well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a bit of a strange place to network, but, you know, you can be on the treadmill, and then someone who's beside you maybe owns an accountancy firm or something. They say, that, you know, I've seen your work for the gym, I'm interested in getting something for my own business. So that was really, I think, the moment that things started to pick up.
It's brilliant. And you're self-taught as well, cameraman and editor. At what point did you do all of this?
It was when I was still working in an agency, so I took up photography as a bit of a hobby. So I did, and then there was a bit of a change in management within the company, and a new line manager came in and sort of said, we want to create video, and I want you to take ownership of it and run with it. So we started out with an old iPhone 5 and a £10 microphone and tripod from Amazon, and that was how we started out. But I thought there's a real market for this, to do it more professionally. So the agency invested in camera equipment and a bit more for professional setup. So I thought, all right, I need to invest in myself now. So it was basically sitting watching YouTube videos, reading articles, and even to this day, I find if I don't know how to do something, YouTube is straight away the place to go, because there's always an answer there. So definitely that was very much a learning curve. But again, very much still learning. It's one of those sectors that you never stop learning in.
No, and it's changed so much as well. There's always some new piece of kit. And if you even just look over the last 20 years, when I kind of started in broadcasting, everything was still analogue at that point, and then the digital transformation happened. And, now a journalist, to get a job anywhere, needs to be able to gather content for so many platforms. You're not just going out and doing a radio interview or a press interview. It's filming at the same time, editing clips. It's the whole shebang.
Absolutely. I think very much whenever I graduated and I was looking to get a job in that PR world, sort of the main skill sets where you have to be able to write, and that was really it.
Yeah. Yeah, but you've got it all now, you see, and you must have had that creative flair too, because there are certain people. I'm not great with the old technology, and I think you've got to love it, because it can be terribly frustrating at times too, can't it?
Absolutely.
And do you think that a lot of people don't appreciate the amount of work that goes into producing a video? I mean, how do you discipline yourself to stick to a certain amount of time per client, because the client mightn't see all of the hours that you're putting in?
Yeah, I think that's what I've come to find with clients is, whenever you give them a quote for a job or a project, if they turn around and say, no, that's too much, they're not the client for me. Not because they don't agree with the fee, but because they don't see the added value I bring to projects. So not only is that 10 years of experience coming with me and my connections, but they don't see the time that I spend away from my family learning and upskilling. They don't appreciate the training and everything that went into that. So, the perfect client for me appreciates that and sees the real added value. What
do you bring to a company, an organisation, an individual?
I think it's almost that hand-holding approach. So it's very much, some people will approach me and they have a very clear idea of a project that they want to do, and I'll discuss it with them and break it down where I think it's good and where it's bad. And some people have very good ideas. Some people come in with very terrible ideas. And part of my role, it's not just to show up and hit record or take a nice photo. It's to be an advisor as well. And that's been the last 10 years of my life as well. It's advising people whether they want to hear it or not. You sometimes used to have to tell a CEO that they were wrong and you were right, and that was very tough, especially being a 23, 24-year-old. But I think that's put me in good stead for now.
Well, you've got that experience, you see, and I just think that what you've got is the whole package, because you're able to communicate with the client, you're able to understand the vision. Sometimes when you work with technical people, they can be so into the art and making it look beautiful and whatever, but what's the script like? Yeah. What message are you saying? And also, hello, would you mind talking to me and tell me how it's going? So you've got to be able to communicate as well with the client, because the client is giving you the money and you've got to look after them, but they've got to trust you to do it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think clear lines of communication and setting those expectations from the outset are extremely important with any client.
So one name jumps out there, Miss Universe. Can I ask you a little bit about that?
Yes, so certainly if you were saying to me a boy that grew up in Ballyclare would be working with Miss Universe, that's a definite pinch me moment, so it is. So it all came about a couple of years ago. I was introduced to the then Miss Universe Ireland by a friend, and through them we just sort of connected and started building a friendship, and just sort of talking about everyday life and sort of how we could work together maybe at some point down the line. And that sort of went on for maybe 6-7 months, and because of the pandemic, nothing really took off from there. And then I remember one night I was replying to Instagram messages, and I noticed I had a notification in my request folder on the business account. So I went into it and I seen this name. It said Brittany Mason, and there was a message, and the photo on the message, this girl was a 12 out of 10, like supermodel. 11, I thought, this is a catfish, I'm deleting this straight away. So I swiped to delete it, and then I sort of noticed the account had a blue tick on it. And I sort of thought, that's a bit strange, that it's an official account. And then I thought, I'm going to delete it. And then I thought, no, at least I'll take a look at it. And I opened it, and there it said Miss Universe Ireland CEO on the account. And I linked to this woman's page that had like her acting credentials and all her supermodel photos and all this. So I thought, this is very strange that this person's contacting me. So it is. So basically the message said, introduced herself and said, I know you're friends with Nadia, who was Miss Universe Ireland at the time, and says, I'm looking some work done in Ireland. Would you be able to help us out?
Gosh, amazing.
So-
Just shows you building those relationships and having those conversations.
Absolutely, and check your message request folders as the main thing. So she just said, can we grab a chat? So we jumped on FaceTime and had a call for probably about half an hour. And I think she was in Florida at the time. I'm sitting in my office in Mollusk, and again, part of me again was thinking that this can't be real. So
I
it
know.
can't.
You're going to have loads of people now opening things that they shouldn't be opening. There'll be hackers
Don't
rubbing their hands.
clink on links. But yeah, certainly that was sort of a real shock to the system, having something like that come on board, and
A real boost.
absolutely a real boost. And we've done sort of 2-3 projects for Miss Universe at the minute, and when you sort of look at one of those projects was filming a VT package and doing some cutaway shots for the Miss Universe Ireland of that year, Catherine Walker from Cool FM. So we were doing some shots and sending that away, and the Miss Universe team then edited it all together for us. So we had the easy job doing the filming, none of the editing.
None of the editing.
Wait,
Wow. Result.
Which is the dream job. And Miss Universe is watched on average 55 million people watch it every year. So to have our stuff on screen and that be played and have that many eyeballs on it is sort of an incredible moment. So in terms of achievement, so the last sort of 2.5 to 3 years, I think that's definitely up there along with the TV credentials. I guess when you say, you're working with brands like that, it really hits home that, yes, this is a viable business now, and it's great to be able to work with those guys.
And on the TV side of things, could we look out for anything? Is any of your work out there at the minute?
We did stuff for Pride of Britain. There some cutaway footage of a local nominee that was produced there, and we done some stuff last year for one of the Sunday morning programmes. They were doing a tour of Belfast and doing some of the street art. So we were doing stuff with one of our clients, Danny Simpson, and those guys. So yeah, certainly there is stuff out there, but it's amazing. Yes, your name is literally on screen for probably less than a second, but it's still there. So certainly when that programme aired, I was getting the selfies beside the TV with the name on screen, and certainly yes, those moments make me extremely proud to think of how far the business has come in that period. When we really look at 10 months, so that the first year of business was spent in lockdown, and we're fast approaching our 100th client. So we are. So to really take sort of 10 months out of that 2.5 years in that time period to nearly be hitting that 100 client mark is something I'm extremely proud of.
How quickly do your clients expect to see results then, or what's the typical way that you work?
Yes, so in terms of results for clients, I think it very much depends on what the actual project is for the client. Some clients will see very, very quick results when they put their content out. Some clients, it's a bit more of a slow burn. For example, one of my clients is a private investment company in Belfast. So their work is not essentially for a quick result, but, they may have a testimonial of a client that they've provided investment to. And that piece of content is carried around on an iPad to meetings for 18 months. Mm. So, they may not necessarily get something right away, but in 18 months' time, that's a long-term piece of content for them. So results can vary. My mantra is quick turnaround with work, because I think clients should get the work in a very quick period. And now I'm not saying sacrifice quality just to get it back to a client. For example, at the start of December there, we were doing a powerlifting competition, and basically everyone that competed had the opportunity to get photographs, videos, whatever, taken to the competition. So we had 13 clients booked us for that event. So the first day was 14 hours of filming, second day was 6.5 hours of filming, so very time intensive, long days. And within 72 hours of that competition ending, we had over 300 photos and 13 videos out to clients.
You did not?
Yeah.
I can't get my head around that.
Oh,
did you have help?
So towards the end of last year, I brought another photographer on board with me, Robbie Gallagher. He's a super talented guy. Now Robbie's just ad hoc basis. He's not a full-time employee, but he helps me on bigger projects. So for that particular project, Robbie looked after all the photography. I did all the video, because to juggle at the same time, I've tried it before and it's very, very difficult. So it is. You're normally lying on a hard wooden floor afterwards for a couple of days with ice packs, because you're just constantly on the go. So that certainly was a massive help in December. But for that, it's important those guys dedicate so much time prepping for a competition like that the content should be with them within 2-3 days, instead of waiting 4 weeks to get their content to then say, here's something I did a month ago kind of thing. So
Incredible turnaround. Your 5 core products then, your videography, your photography, your social media workshops that you do, your content audits and drone work. I had a little Google, you see. So you offer all of these. So if anybody's listening now and thinks like, I'd really love to take my business to the next level and think about imagery or think about my social media, what should they do? What would you be telling them to do apart from pick up the phone?
Pick up the phone and book me.
Exactly.
Certainly, it's the way the world is going. Sort of the pandemic has really accelerated how businesses market themselves, and it still amazes me how many businesses I speak to, and they either don't have social media, they still don't have a website, and it's 2023.
Really? They still don't have a digital presence?
Yeah, and a lot of the time that is, family-run businesses. The dad who might be in his late 70s is still heading up the company and sort of saying, well, we've always relied on people coming through the door or word of mouth to get business out there. And yes, while that may still work, it's, you have to drag some companies into the new era and sort of really sell digital platforms to them and how they benefit from it.
Yes, and I suppose it is that understanding of the difference that it can make. You also, though, could pay somebody an awful lot of money to produce a wonderful video for you, put it on your website, and nobody sees it.
Nobody sees it, exactly.
So you think beyond that. You think, where's this going to go? And you measure results?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very much, it can't be a one-hit wonder. Just producing one video is rarely ever going to land you massive results that you want to see. It has to be a continuous thing.
And part of a strategy.
It has to be a long-term strategy because, you can't just post one thing and then disappear for a month and have no online presence. So there very much needs to be a plan in place there. And that's one of the things I say to clients is, I can come in and I can shoot a one-off video or do one-off photos and that's it. I'm happy to do that if that's what you want. But why don't we spend a day and shoot a bank of content that can be released over weeks, over months, and you're getting more value? Because you're still going to pay me to be there to shoot one video. I may as well be there for a day and we get a lot of content. And that maybe works against me because I maybe don't hear from those clients for 3-4 months, but they still have that bank of content to use and they always come back, which is the main thing.
Fantastic. And so you're nearly 3 years in business now. Any regrets?
I think life's too short to have regrets. I think if you're always looking back and thinking, I wish I'd done this, then you're losing sight on looking forward. And I think certainly I don't have any regrets. I definitely don't miss sitting in traffic in the morning. I don't miss those 60-hour weeks. There's a really good balance in my life now. I think... No regrets. I think the main thing for me is that I have that balance now and I work to my own schedule and I want to work with the people I want to work with. I'm not told to go here and do this and do that. And
would you like to expand further? I mean, you've got Robbie already doing the photos, but would you like to take more people on?
I think in the long term, bringing those people on for projects on an ad hoc basis, definitely it's the way to go. There's so many talented people here.
Great to collaborate rather than employ.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one of the things I actually looked at as well as sort of last year was building those networks and connections out to offer wider services. So, I have a website builder, I have design and graphics people, I have a PR person, I have an event management person. So, if someone comes to me and they're looking at a new website because they're doing a rebrand and they're having an event, instead of just selling them one product, I can upsell them 3 products and. Again, we all pass work between ourselves and it's people I've worked with in the past and really trust. So there's very much an element there of a full service there. So people maybe come to me looking one thing and you can upsell 3 or 4 things to them. And again, it's all kept sort of very tight-knit. And
there's a very strong network in Northern Ireland of
Absolutely.
Creative people. And it is fabulous to hear that you all... I suppose look out for each other and help each other. Where did the name come from, 8590?
Okay, so whenever the business first started, it was just called AK Videography, so my initials on videography. So it does what it says on the tin. And then after the first year, with these other offerings, it became very clear that name was not sustainable. I guess one of the long-term visions I had for the business was potentially building it to a point where I would sell it, and it's very hard to sell a business with your own initials in it. So I thought I need a name that sort of is a bit nondescript, and I worked with my brand and designer team, and we sort of did a bit of market research and looked at what other people were calling their businesses and how they were promoting themselves, and there was very much a copy and paste element of everything. You know, everything was digital production creations. There was nothing that really stood out as different. So 85, 90, 85 is the year my brother was born, 90 was the year I was born.
Oh.
So it just made sense. It's always been a number that's sort of been with us since childhood.
Yeah.
And again, it could be anything. It could be a drinks brand, it could be a hotel, it could be a restaurant. It really could be anything.
And it piques curiosity.
Exactly. And that's the biggest thing, because when I'm speaking at events or I'm at networking events or exhibiting, people always come over and that's the first thing they ask is, what is it you do? And what does it mean? The cars brand it as well with the 8590 as well, and you see people at traffic lights sort of looking at it, and then you see the sort of the boost in the web traffic then at night.
Oh, do you? So they go home and they have a little search?
Yeah. So I was doing work in Dublin last November, and I'd parked the car in a very prominent place in Dublin, and the next day I just happened to check, and there was a lot of IP addresses from Dublin had been Googling me, which sort of worked well. So they always say your branding should be very obvious and clear, but I thought the complete opposite. So yeah, I think, you know, if you're exhibiting somewhere and you have photo or video in your name, if people aren't looking for that service, they walk straight on past. But now, 9 times out of 10, people come over and it starts that conversation, and that's when you really can get personal with people and sort of do that pitch to them, and it really sparks conversation. So yeah, the branding was very good. It was done by my friends at Clever Ghost. So they did a great job with it, and certainly it's worked well so far.
Nice plug for them too. What then would you say, Andrew, makes your services unique and different from a very competitive market now?
Yeah, I would even call it an oversaturated market. So I would now. I think bringing that experience and that network with me is very appealing. I still get people asking me to do their PR for them and their marketing, and I have to say, no, I'm retired from that life now. But again, I can get a call from a client saying, you know, do you know a journalist in this newspaper that I can speak to? And certainly they're still in the little black book, and I can help them out that way. So I can. So I think having that wider experience, that skill set is very unique. I don't think there's really anyone else. I'm very surprised if there is anyone with that sort of skill set here. But again, I think it's just that added value that I bring. And like I said, the added value is why people choose to come to me over other people. I think price point as well. That was one of the first objectives I sort of set with the business, was I wanted my business to really help startups, small businesses, and be at a price point that was easily accessible for them. Because when I did my research and spoke to these companies, they were telling me they were getting quotes from people for £2,000-3,000 to produce 60-second videos, and I just thought, that's astronomical. So it is for it. So I really seen that there was a market here to help these businesses grow.
So what would we be talking price-wise now?
It depends who's asking.
Okay.
A general rule of thumb, I sort of work to an hourly rate for projects, and that's very clearly marked out with clients before we even start projects. So I will give them an idea in terms of what I think it is, in terms of hours on site and hours editing, and they're aware that if we go over those hours, it's flagged and they have to pay that additional time. So I'd say, you know, a couple of £100 is a general ballpark for a very basic starter project. Again, it varies in terms of what the client's looking for and where they're going. I think it's very difficult to do a tiered package for projects, because people want the gold package, but they want to pay the bronze price with it, which is very difficult. And I think if you're also saying a 60-second video costs £900, it's very difficult to quantify that, because I could be on site for an hour and spend an hour editing and create that length of video and charge £900, or I could be on site for 6 hours and charge the same amount. So it's very
price
hard.
Per job then, really.
Absolutely. And I think that's something Northern Ireland businesses, we don't really like talking about, and we sort of shy away from is pricing. So it is, and we feel awkward having to go to clients and say, well, actually this is costing more because you've run up a lot of hours on this project.
And knowing your worth. The value of what you provide. And
I think that was something when I started I struggled with, because I was very much, I need to say yes to everything, no matter what it is. If, you know, I said this is what it costs, and I says, well, actually I only have this amount, I was still saying yes, because I wanted to get clients in the door, I wanted to get money coming in. And I got to the point where I realised those weren't the people that I wanted to work with, and not the clients I wanted to have in my books, because again there was a lack of appreciation there for my time. So certainly, yeah, it was very much this is the bottom line, this is it. And again, if people come back to me and say we don't have budget for that, I'll happily signpost them to another videographer, another photographer that can work within those budgets. You know, it's like you say, it's a very small network and country we have here. You know, it's very easy to get a bad name.
Absolutely, it is indeed. So tell us, taking everything into consideration, you, the videographer, the creator, if you like, and you, the business owner, what's your favourite part of all of it, and what's your least favourite part of all of it?
I think we'll start with the negative. I think the least favourite is, there's not many, but I would say the one thing is probably the unsociable hours you can get with being self-employed. You know, I might have a Friday morning off to myself to do whatever I want, and I could be starting a project at 9 o'clock that night and maybe not finish till midnight, is the kind of thing. So, for example, the week of Christmas, I had to be at the Boulevard for 4 a.m. in the morning to help Santa and his elves deliver some presents and film it. So it was a very, very early wake-up call that morning. So it was. So I suppose that's all part and parcel of being self-employed. But I think certainly the most positive thing about it is the range of work and meeting so many different people from different backgrounds and meeting so many more entrepreneurs and people who are really making a difference with a business. You know, as much as I enjoy that corporate work, I really like working with those businesses and local charities that really are making differences in people's lives, I think, for it. And certainly, yeah, I think being in that agency life, you're so focused on one sector and you don't really get that exposure, whereas now being on my own, I could only dream of working with some of the people that I've worked with.
And you've worked with some of the world's leading brands, as we said at the start, Miss Universe, Lego, Levi's, ITV, Danske Bank, Kurt Geiger, but you're also working with wonderful, wonderful organisations at a local level. You know, which floats your boat more?
I guess probably the project fees you get from those big clients are
okay.
very attractive, but certainly, you know, working with those small organisations and one-to-ones and charities, you know, you see the difference that's making, and certainly you get that warm fuzzy feeling knowing you're helping promote such a positive message. So two of the local charities I would work with would be Hope for Life and Cavaliers in Need. So one of my dogs actually came from Cavaliers in Need that I adopted. So, you know, they do such great work, and it's nice to be able to help them and do that sort of thing. But, you know, if you sat me down here a few years ago and said, you know, you're going to have Miss Universe, ITV, Fibrous, all those sort of companies in your books, I'd sort of pinch myself and say definitely not. So amazing journey you've been on one that started, you know, quite dramatically, I suppose, and then with such downs attached to it. I'd love now just to inspire others listening to this. So we've kind of come to the end of the podcast, Andrew, and the purpose of the Public Eye podcast is to inspire existing business owners and those ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their businesses by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as 8590. So, final question, what advice would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth the taking? Certainly one of the questions I get asked most when I'm doing speaking events and speaking to people about entrepreneurship is, how do I know when the time's right? And the very simple answer is there's never a right time. You know, there's never a point in life where all the stars will align and there will be nothing that goes wrong. There will always be something to put an obstacle in your way. And I think if you don't try, you know, you've got to take that leap and believe in yourself and believe in a product and service that you're creating and trying to sell. Certainly the enterprise agencies, I've had amazing support and success with those guys, especially Mollusk Enterprise and Antrim Enterprise in particular. Especially building connections and getting work referrals through those guys as well has been helpful, and certainly the Invest NI programs, go for it, and we're also doing the Optimal program at the moment now with Invest NI. So those are free programs with access to business mentors who have been doing this 20, 30, 40 years, and it's an external set of eyes in the business, and all this is free. And I think a lot of people don't know about this, and when you say to them, they're like, right, that's interesting. Some people have never heard of enterprise agencies, and certainly the work they do is absolutely fantastic, and certainly that's a very good point to start to, even if you just have an inkling of an idea for a business, what you want to do. It doesn't cost anything to go and speak to those guys and say, listen, this is what I'm thinking of doing. One, do you think it's a viable business? And two, how do I get started with it? So certainly the support is there, and certainly funding in terms of SMEs and startups. There's so many opportunities in Northern Ireland as well, and it's certainly a market where I would encourage people to at least try it, because worst case scenario, you try and you fail. But if you don't even try, you're failing yourself then.
Wow. Now, also, in terms of just listening to your story, that personal resilience that you've shown right the way through your career to date, what advice would you give to people about, sticking at it, or knowing when to maybe give up and try something else?
Yeah.
What message would you have around that?
I think particularly in the world of work, when you lose your passion for what it is you're doing, people just do a job because it's a wage. But when you're passionate about a job and you lose that passion, it's nearly impossible to come back from that. And I think that's when you have to decide, do I try and rediscover that passion, or do I try and discover passion for something else? And it can be very hard, and it may take a few jobs and different routes to get there. My road to my business wasn't a straight road. There's a few twists and turns and a few jobs in there that I probably wouldn't have liked doing, but again, it was a wage. So I'd certainly say, if you're not happy in your job and you think, I want to be doing something else, it's very much, well, look at that step. If you want to take that jump, take that jump. Worst case scenario, you take that jump and it doesn't work out, you can always find another job. So you can.
But you've moved forward and you've moved somewhere, and opportunities will happen.
Absolutely.
Andrew Kelly, owner of 8590, I wish you every success for the future. Thank you for being a guest on the Public Eye podcast. And to all of you tuning in, hope you've enjoyed this edition. We'll be back with plenty more very soon. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.